discord among its people or leaders. In such cases, a wise king may use deception to neutralize these threats. Bhishma's eyes seemed to gleam with insight as he spoke of the various tools of war. Leathern armor for protecting elephants, armor made from iron and bone, sharp-pointed weapons, coats of mail. All these should be manufactured and stored in abundance. The soldiers must be inspired with courage and resolution, and the troops should be set in motion during favorable times, such as the months of Chaitra or Agrahana, when crops are ripe and water is plentiful. As Bhishma spoke, Yudhishthira listened intently, his mind absorbing every word. The road chosen for marching the troops should have an abundance of water and grass along it, be level and easy to traverse. Bhishma continued, regions near the road should be scouted by skilled spies who can provide information about any potential dangers. Bhishma's words painted a vivid picture in Yudhishthira's mind. The troops marching through rolling hills, their armor shining in the sunlight as they move towards battle. In the van of the army should be placed brave men, strong and noble, who can lead the charge against the enemy. Bhishma spoke of forts, explaining that those with walls and trenches full of water on every side were worthy of praise, for they could provide a safe haven in times of battle. When pitching camp, it is better to choose a spot near woods than one exposed under the open sky. Bhishma advises. Yudhishthira listened. He began to grasp the intricacies of warfare as described by his grandsire. The troops should be placed in such a position that they face the wind, sun, and planet Sukra from behind them. Bhishma said, "This is the key to victory, for it allows the warriors to fight with air." In the midst of a grand assembly, Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, posed a question to Bhishma, the revered elder statesman. What disposition, what behavior, what form, how accoutred, and how armed should our warriors be in order that they may be competent for battle? He asked. Bhishma's eyes sparkled with wisdom as he began to recount the characteristics of various armies from different regions. He spoke of the Gandharvas, the Saintas, and the Sathiras, who fought with their nails and lances. Their bravery and strength unmatched, these warriors are capable of vanquishing all forces. Bhishma declared as he continued to describe the various armies. Bhishma's words painted vivid pictures in the minds of his listeners. He spoke of the Usanas, skilled in all kinds of weapons, who were as strong as thunderbolts, the Easterners with their expertise in fighting from elephant back, and the Yavas, Camoljas, and those around Mathura, who wielded bare arms like lions. But Bhishma's descriptions went beyond mere physical characteristics. He spoke of signs that indicated a warrior's prowess: eyes like a lion, or Tejar, a voice like thunder, or eyes that shone like the stars. These are heroes capable of grinding hostile ranks, he said with conviction. Others with voices like deer or faces like leopards or bulls were possessed of great activity. Bhishma's words flowed on, describing warriors with bodies curved like cats, thin hair and skin, and eyes closed like those of an iguana. These warriors became invincible in battle. Their speed and restlessness unmatched. Others with well-knit frames, broad chests, and faces darkened by frowns were brave beyond measure. As Bhishma spoke, his listeners hummed on every word, their imaginations running wild with visions of the various armies. He described warriors with crooked eyes, broad foreheads, and arms strong as thunderbolts. These warriors rushed into battle like infuriated elephants, unstoppable in their fury. Finally, Bhishma spoke of a particular type of warrior, fierce, reckless, and haughty. Their faces were terrible to behold, and they lived on the outskirts of society. Such troops should always be placed in the van. Bhishma advised. They are wicked in behavior, but they slay their foes with ease and never retreat from battle. As Bhishma finished speaking, a hush fell over the assembly. Yudhishthira's eyes shone with gratitude as he thanked Bhishma for his wisdom. The assembly dispersed, each warrior carrying with him the lessons of Bhishma's words, ready to face the challenges of battle with newfound confidence and understanding. The sun was setting over the vast expanse of the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the armies gathered before King Yudhishthira. The king's curiosity got the better of him, and he turned to Bhishma, his wise and venerable uncle, and asked, "What are the signs that foretell victory for an army? I must know them." Bhishma, with a knowing smile, began to recount the ancient wisdom of the Bharatas. When the gods themselves become angry, he said, and fate urges us on, we must perform auspicious acts and expiatory rites to allay the evil that has befallen us. He spoke of the importance of maintaining a cheerful and undepressed army, where even the animals seemed to share in their joy. The wind blew favorably from behind. Such troops rainbows appeared in the sky, and clouds cast their shadows upon them as Bhishma continued his tale. He pointed out the auspicious signs that foretold victory. The guns and drums sent forth loud and deep peals. The combatants became filled with alacrity, and even deer and other quadrupeds seemed to regard the army with favor if they appeared behind or to the left of those who have already set out for battle. Bhishma explained they are regarded auspicious, but if they appeared in the van it was a sign of disaster and defeat. Bhishma also spoke of the importance of conciliation and diplomacy, saying that the policy of producing disunion among one's foes should be tried before resorting to battle. The collision of battle is not desirable as long as it can be avoided. He cautioned, but when war was inevitable, a king must apply the arts of conciliation, mixing them with measures of severity. As the night wore on, Bhishma spoke of the uses of forgiveness and severity in warfare. He told Yudhishthira that forgiveness should be shown after conquest, but not before a wooden pole. If made straight without heat, he said, very soon assumes his former state, but skilled in the scriptures do not approve of this approach, saying that a foe should be subdued and checked like a sire, subduing and checking a son. Yudhishthira listened intently to Bhishma's words, his mind soaking up the ancient wisdom like a parched earth drinking in the rains. He knew that he would have to walk a fine line between severity and mildness, for a king who became too harsh was hated by all creatures, while one who became too lenient was disregarded. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Bhishma concluded his tale, saying a king should thus under all circumstances behave with conciliation. A king that is fearless and virtuous becomes the beloved of all creatures. Yudhishthira, the sun was setting over the kingdom, casting a warm orange glow over the sprawling city. Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, sat in deep contemplation with his revered grandsire, Bhishma. He asked for guidance on how to navigate the complexities of war and diplomacy, seeking wisdom on how to behave towards foes who were mild, fierce, or powerful. Bhishma's eyes sparkled as he began to recount an ancient tale from the celestial realms. Indra, the mighty king of the gods, had once sought the counsel of Brihaspati, the wisest of sages. Indra was torn between his desire for victory and his fear of losing the prosperity that had been granted to him. Brihaspati listened intently as Indra poured out his concerns and then spoke in words of wisdom. One should never seek to subdue one's foes through quarrel or aggression. Instead, one must conceal their ire and fear within while appearing calm and composed on the surface. Brihaspati counseled Indra to speak sweet words to his enemies, to win them over with kindness and generosity. But Bhishma did not stop there. He continued to expound upon the ancient sages' teachings, sharing the intricacies of war strategy and diplomacy. A king should always be mindful of his foes, he said, and never underestimate their cunning or strength. Brihaspati had advised Indra to use spies and agents to gather intelligence on his enemies, to identify their weaknesses and exploit them. As Bhishma spoke, the room grew quiet, as if the very presence of wisdom was suffusing the air. Yudhishthira listened with rapt attention, absorbing every word, like a thirsty plant drinking in the rain. He knew that he had much to learn from his grandsire's teachings, and that the art of war was not just about winning battles, but also about maintaining balance and harmony within the kingdom. Bhishma's words painted a vivid picture of a king who walked the fine line between strength and weakness, always mindful of the delicate dance between conciliation and confrontation. He spoke of the importance of strategy and cunning, of using gifts and sweet words to win over one's enemies, while also being prepared to strike when the time was right. As the evening drew to a close, Yudhishthira rose from his seat, his eyes shining with gratitude towards his grandsire. He knew that he had been given a precious gift, the wisdom of the ages distilled into words of guidance and counsel, and as he walked away from the gathering, he felt a sense of peace settle over him, knowing that he would carry the lessons of Bhishma's teachings with him for the rest of his life. In the midst of a grand kingdom, King Yudhishthira sat in deep contemplation, seeking guidance from the wise Bhishma. The king's thoughts were consumed by the turmoil within him. His officers opposed him, his treasury and army were no longer under his control, and he was left with nothing. Bhishma, sensing the depth of the king's sorrow, began to share a timeless tale of wisdom. He spoke of Prince Kshimedarsan, who had once been a mighty ruler, but had fallen into great distress. The prince had sought out the sage Kalikavritsaya, a wise and revered scholar, in search of guidance. The prince's words were filled with desperation and longing. "What should I do, O Brahmana?" He asked, his voice trembling with anguish. "I have failed to recover my kingdom. Despite repeated efforts, should I resort to suicide, thievery, or robbery, or should I seek refuge with others?" Kalikavritsaya listened attentively, his eyes filled with compassion and understanding. He began to speak in a gentle, measured tone, his words dripping with wisdom. "You have already understood the truth, my prince," he said. "All things are transient and fleeting. Our attachments to wealth and power are like illusions. They vanish like smoke in the wind." The sage's words were like a balm to the prince's troubled heart. He spoke of the impermanence of all things, how even the greatest empires rise and fall with the passage of time. "Reflect on your own instability," Kalikavritsaya urged. "You too will cease to be one day." The king listened intently as Bhishma recounted the sage's words. He was struck by the depth of wisdom that had been shared, and he felt a sense of peace wash over him. But still he struggled with his own desires and attachments. Bhishma continued to speak, offering guidance and counsel to the troubled king. "Do not grieve for what is past or future," he said. "Be content with what you have, and do not covet what others possess. Remember that all things are fleeting, and that true happiness lies within." The king's eyes widened as he listened, his heart slowly beginning to heal. He saw the wisdom in Bhishma's words, and he felt the sense of peace settle over him. In this moment he knew that he had been given a precious gift, the gift of understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the kingdom, King Yudhishthira rose from his seat, his heart filled with gratitude. He knew that he would never forget the lessons he had learned in this moment, and that he would carry them with him for the rest of his days. In the midst of turmoil, King Harishcandra of Kosala sought the counsel of a wise sage. The king's kingdom was on the brink of collapse, and he had lost his way. The sage, sensing an opportunity to guide the monarch back onto the path of righteousness, proposed a plan to restore the kingdom's prosperity. "Renounce your pride and desires," the sage said. "Gently wait upon your enemies with humility and devotion. Serve Janaka, the ruler of Mithila, by performing good deeds and adhering to truth. The king of Vidya will reward you with great wealth, and you shall become his trusted Ole." The king listened intently as the sage outlined a strategy for recovery. "Join forces with those who possess courage, perseverance, and purity of behavior," he advised. "Through Janaka's favor you shall gather Oles from diverse backgrounds, united by their commitment to duty and truth." As the sage continued, his words painted vivid scenes in the king's mind. He envisioned himself serving under Janaka, earning the trust of all, and eventually becoming the right arm of the wise ruler. The thought sent a surge of hope through the king's heart. The sage then revealed a second approach to create divisions among their foes by manipulating them into conflict with one another. Or he added, "Make peace with your enemies, and thus break their powers." The conversation unfolded. The sage wove a complex tapestry of advice, drawing from various strategies to drain an enemy's treasury, sowing discord, and even employing subtle deceit. He cautioned against relying too heavily on force or worshipping gods through excessive rituals. In one particularly striking passage, the sage described how to manipulate an enemy by offering them luxuries that would ultimately deplete their resources. "Cause your foe to desire beautiful women, costly garments, and precious objects," he said, his words dripping with calculated strategy. "Weaken them with indulgence, and they will be ruined from within." Finally, the sage revealed a plan involving poison and deception, suggesting that an intelligent leader could destroy an entire kingdom through cunning and stealth. The king listened in rapt attention as the sage outlined various schemes, each one more audacious than the last. As the meeting drew to a close, the king felt a sense of resolve wash over him. He knew that he had been given a rare gift, a chance to reclaim his kingdom's prosperity through wise counsel and strategic planning. With newfound determination, he vowed to follow the sage's advice, no matter how difficult the path ahead may be. In the land of Kosala, a king sat in contemplation with a wise Brahmana known for his unwavering righteousness. The king's words revealed his desire to live a life free from deceit and unrighteous means, where every action would bring him honor and benefit without causing harm to others. The Brahmana, perceiving the king's genuine intentions, offered words of encouragement. He said, that the king was indeed righteous in disposition and understanding, and that he would strive for their mutual good. The sage declared that a union between the king and another ruler, King Janak of Vaidya, could be forged, one that would stand the test of Tana Brahmana. Then invited King Janaka to his abode, where he revealed to him the noble character of the Kosalan prince. He described the prince as having a heart as pure as a mirror's surface, and a soul as unblemished as the autumnal moon. The sage assured the king that this prince was worthy of friendship, and King Janaka was deeply moved by the Brahmana's words, and he saw it in the Kosalan prince a valuable ally and minister. He acknowledged that a king without a wise and courageous minister could not govern his kingdom for even 3 days. The two kings then came together, each respecting the other's qualities and strengths, as they proceeded to the capital of Mithila. King Janaka honored the Kosalan prince with great respect and kindness. He offered him gifts, including his own daughter, precious gems and jewels. In this way, a bond of friendship was forged between the two kings, one that would endure through the trials of time. The wise Brahmana looked on, pleased by the establishment of peace between these two mighty rulers. He reminded them that victory and defeat are uncertain, and that true greatness lies in upholding righteousness and honor. And so, under the guidance of this noble sage, a new era of cooperation and mutual respect dawned upon the kingdoms of Kosala and Vaidya. In the midst of this newfound friendship, both kings paid their respects to the wise Brahmana, acknowledging his wisdom and his role in bringing them together as they looked towards the future. They knew that their union would be a beacon of hope for generations to come, a shining example of how righteousness and honor can conquer even the greatest of challenges. The sun had just begun to set over the kingdom, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets of Hastinapura. Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, sat in his chambers deep in thought. He had listened intently as Bhishma, the venerable warrior and advisor, had laid out the intricacies of governance and the duties of kings. But now Yudhishthira's mind turned to a new question. How could he ensure that the brave warriors who stood by his side remained loyal and united? He sought guidance from Bhishma, whose words carried weight like a gentle breeze on a summer day of scorcher of foes. Yudhishthira said, "You have spoken of the duties of kings and the characteristics of a kingdom's nobles. But tell me, how can I maintain harmony among my brave warriors? How can they grow strong, attached to me, and succeed in subjugating their enemies?" Bhishma nodded thoughtfully, his eyes clouding with concern. Between the aristocracy and kings or monarch, he began, avarice and wrath are the causes of enmity. When one party yields to avarice, the other becomes consumed by wrath. Each seeks to weaken and destroy the other, leading to their own downfall. As Bhishma spoke, his words wove a tapestry of caution and wisdom. He warned that when the nobles became disunited or separated from the king, they would fall prey to fear and side with the enemies of their ruler. But if they stood united like a compact body, they could earn great victories through their strength and prowess. Men of knowledge applaud those nobles who stand together in love. Bhishma said, when united in purpose, all of them can be happy. They can establish righteous conduct and advance in prosperity by behaving properly and teaching their duties to their sons and brothers. Yudhishthira listened intently, his heart filled with gratitude for the wisdom of his advisor. He knew that maintaining harmony among his warriors was a delicate balance, one that required careful attention and respect. But what happens when the nobles become separated and disunited? Yudhishthira asked, his brow furrowed in concern. Bhishma's expression turned grave. When they quarrel with each other and act without combination, their prosperity dwindles away, and diverse kinds of evil occur. Those amongst them who are possessed of learning and wisdom should tread down a dispute as soon as it happens. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Hastinapura in a warm twilight glow, Yudhishthira felt a sense of peace settle over him. He knew that he had much to learn from Bhishma's words, but also that with the guidance of his wise advisor he could navigate the complexities of governance and maintain harmony. In the midst of a grand assembly, Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, posed a profound question to Bhishma, his revered mentor. Bhishma, he said, the path of duty is long and winding, with many branches that lead in different directions. Which duties, in your esteemed opinion, are most deserving of our practice? What acts, if performed diligently, will earn us the highest merit, both in this life And the next Bhishma's eye sparkled as he began to speak, his voice filled with conviction. The worship of one's mother, father, and preceptor is the most important duty, O Yudhishthira. He said, by attending to this duty, a person will acquire great fame in many regions of felicity in the afterlife. He continued, one should treat these three with respect, no matter what they command, even if it goes against righteousness. One should never disobey them or do what they forbid. They are the very fabric of our existence. The father is like the sacred Garhapatya, fire, the mother, like the Dakshana, fire, and the preceptor like the fire upon which libations are poured. As Bhishma spoke, his words painted vivid images in Yudhishthira's mind. He saw the three fires burning brightly, their flames representing the love and devotion that one should show to one's mother, father, and preceptor. Bhishma emphasized the importance of serving these three with regularity. By serving one's father with dedication, one may cross this world. He said, by serving one's mother in the same way, one may attain to regions of felicity in the next, and by serving one's preceptor with devotion, one may obtain the region of Brahma. As Bhishma finished speaking, Yudhishthira felt a sense of awe and reverence wash over him. He realized that the duties that Bhishma had outlined were not just mere obligations, but a path to spiritual growth and enlightenment. Bhishma's words continued to flow like a river, carrying Yudhishthira along with them. He who honors these three is honored in all the worlds, he said, and he who disregards them falls short of earning merit from any of his acts. The assembly listened in rapt attention. Bhishma shared a personal anecdote about the rewards of worshipping one's preceptor. All that I have given away in honor of my own preceptors has become 100-fold or 1,000-fold its actual measure, he said. It is in consequence of that merit that even now, O Yudhishthira, the three worlds are clearly before my eyes. In a final gesture of devotion, Bhishma spoke about the superiority of one's preceptor over all others. In the midst of a bustling kingdom, Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, sought the counsel of Bhishma, the wise and venerable grandfather of the royal family. With an air of reverence, Yudhishthira approached Bhishma and asked, O great Bhishma, how should a person act who desires to adhere to virtue? What is truth? What is falsehood? And when should one speak the truth or tell an untruth? Bhishma's eyes sparkled with wisdom as he began to explain. To tell the truth is consistent with righteousness. He said, there is nothing higher than truth. He paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts before continuing. However, there are situations where speaking the truth would be akin to speaking falsehood, and vice versa. In such cases, one must exercise discernment. Bhishma's words were laced with the weight of experience gained from centuries of observing the complexities of human nature. He went on to illustrate his point with examples drawn from mythology and everyday life. Even a person who is disrespectful, cruel, or uncleansed can earn great merit by performing acts that benefit others. He said, conversely, an owl, which is often seen as a symbol of wisdom, can commit sinful acts and still gain merit. As Bhishma spoke, Yudhishthira listened intently, his eyes wide with wonder. He was fascinated by the nuances of righteousness and the subtleties of truth and falsehood. But how do we distinguish between what is right and wrong? He asked. Bhishma's expression turned thoughtful. Righteousness was declared for the advancement and growth of all creatures. He said, it is that which prevents injury to others, upholds all living beings, and leads to their well-being. He paused, reflecting on the vast expanse of human knowledge. Some say that righteousness consists in what has been inculcated in the Srutas, while others disagree. I would not censure them for their differing opinions. As the conversation continued, Bhishma offered guidance on various situations where one might need to speak untruths or tell falsehoods. He explained that in times of danger or when protecting wealth and prosperity, it was permissible to say what was untrue. However, he emphasized that such actions should be taken with caution and only as a last resort. Yudhishthira listened attentively, his mind absorbing the wisdom shared by Bhishma. As they spoke, the weight of responsibility settled upon him, reminding him of the importance of making difficult choices in pursuit of virtue. The conversation came to an end, but its impact would stay with Yudhishthira, forever guiding him on his path towards righteousness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the kingdom,
The sun was setting over the kingdom, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets of Hastinapura. Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, sat in contemplative silence on his throne, his eyes lost in thought. His trusted grandfather Bhishma stood before him. Sensing the weight of his concerns, grandsire Yudhishthira said, finally breaking the silence, I see that all creatures are afflicted by diverse means and almost continually. How can one overcome these difficulties? Bhishma's eyes sparkled with wisdom as he began to speak. Those who follow their dharma, the duties laid down in the scriptures for their mode of life, will find the way to overcome all obstacles. It is not just about following rules, but about cultivating a sense of restraint and self-control. Pause, surveying the kingdom before him. One must never speak deceitfully nor harm others. When oneself is injured, one must give freely without expecting anything in return, and one must always offer shelter to guests, regardless of their station or background. Yudhishthira listened intently, his eyes drinking in every word. Bhishma continued, those who study the Vedas with devotion and practice penances will also find a way to overcome all difficulties. They must abstain from malice and cultivate compassion towards all living beings. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the kingdom in a warm twilight glow, Bhishma spoke of the importance of self-discipline and detachment. One must not be swayed by passion or covetousness. He said, a king who rules justly, protecting his people from harm, will also find a way to overcome all obstacles. Yudhishthira's eyes grew wide with understanding as Bhishma spoke of the importance of truth and honesty. One must always speak the truth, even when life is at stake, he said, and one must be an exemplar for others to follow, showing compassion and kindness towards all creatures. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Bhishma spoke of the ultimate refuge from all difficulties. Narayana, the supreme Lord of all creatures, this Krishna, with his eyes red as the lotus, clad in yellow robes, is the embodiment of divine power, he said. He who seeks the refuge of Narayana will find a way to overcome all obstacles. As Bhishma finished speaking, Yudhishthira's face shone with a newfound sense of understanding and determination. He knew that he had been given a precious gift, the knowledge of how to overcome all difficulties in this life and the next. The wise old king smiled, his eyes filled with gratitude towards his grandsire. I will remember your words, Bhishma, he said, and I will strive to follow them for Adi.
In the assembly of Yudhishthira, a question was raised about how to discern between individuals with tranquil souls and those who appear to be calm. But are not Bhishma in response shared an ancient tale from the city of Purika? King named Purika ruled Purika with cruelty and delighting in injuring others. After his death, he was reborn as a jackal. Remembering his former prosperity and filled with grief, he abstained from meat, became compassionate towards all creatures, and truthful in speech. The jackal dwelled in a vast crematorium where he liked to reside. Due to its association with his past life, the other members of his species, unable to endure the purity of his behavior, approached him with humility, urging him to abandon such conduct and eat meat like them. However, the jackal replied, with reason and compassion, my birth may be low, but it is my conduct that determines my character. I desire to behave in a way that spreads fame, although I reside in this crematorium. Listen to my vows of behavior. The jackal explained that one's actions are determined by their own self, not the mode of life they follow. He cautioned against adopting evil ways for personal gain and reminded them that even small acts can lead to great consequences. Moved by temptation, many were engaged in filling their stomachs without considering the long-term effects. A Teja renowned for its prowess overheard this conversation and took the jackal for a learned person of pure behavior. The Teja offered the jackal respectful worship and expressed the desire to appoint him as his minister. A righteous personage said, the Teja, I know what you are. Attend to the duties of government with myself. Enjoy whatever articles may be desired by thee, abandoning whatever may not suit thee. Taste honoring these words. The jackal replied with humility, your words are fitting for you, O king of beasts. It is also worthy of you that you seek ministers of pure behavior and conversant with duties and worldly affairs. However, I am content with my present position and do not desire to change it for anything else. The jackal explained his reasons, stating that he was a man of cleansed soul, incapable of showing severity even towards sinners. The Teja, pleased with the jackal's response, accepted him as his minister. As the jackal began to serve the Teja, the old servants conspired against him. displaying hatred and trying to win him over with friendly behavior. However, they were ultimately unable to tolerate the jackal's influence and resented being ruled by someone they considered inferior. The story of the tiger and the jackal serves as a reminder that true character is determined by one's actions, not their birth or social status. The tale highlights the importance of integrity, compassion, and selflessness in leadership, even when faced with adversity and opposition. In the presence of Yudhishthira, Bhishma began to recount a tale from ancient times, one that would serve as a lesson for the young king. Listen well. Yudhishthira, Bhishma said, his eyes gleaming with wisdom, I shall tell you of a camel who lived in the Krita age, a time when the world was still pure and untainted by the vices that would come later. This camel was no ordinary creature. He had a deep understanding of all the acts he had committed in past lives, and he had spent many years practicing severe austerities in the forest. His penances had not gone unnoticed, for the great Brahmin himself was pleased with the camel's devotion. The grandsire, as he was known, desired to grant the camel boons, and so he asked what his heart's desire was. The camel thought for a moment before responding. Let my neck be long enough, he said, so that I may reach any food that lies at the end of even 100 yojanas. The Brahmin granted this boon, and the camel returned to his forest home, where he spent most of his days lounging in his cave waiting for food to come to him. His long neck allowed him to pick up food with ease, but it also made him complacent. One day a great storm swept through the land, bringing torrential rains and strong winds. The camel retreated into his cave, hoping to wait out the tempest. But as he huddled in the darkness, the jackal and its mate stumbled upon the cave, seeking shelter from the rain. The jackal, driven by hunger, saw the camel's long neck and began to eat away at it. Not even noticing that the camel was still alive, the jackal and his wife continued to devour the camel's neck. He realized what was happening and tried to shorten it, but it was too late. His life force ebbed away, and soon he was no more. The jackal emerged from the cave when the storm had passed, unaware of the evil deed he had committed. Bhishma gazed at Yudhishthira with a serious expression. Behold, what a great evil followed in the train of idleness, he said. The camel's complacency led to his downfall, and it is a lesson for you. A king or ruler should not be idle or lazy, but rather use his intelligence and wisdom to govern his kingdom. Bhishma continued, drawing on the words of Manu himself. Victory depends upon intelligence, he said. A king who is clever in business and restrains his senses will ensure that his kingdom endures. Those who listen to wise counsels, possessed of all these and acting after proper scrutiny, succeed in achieving all their objects. Yudhishthira listened in the assembly hall. Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, posed a question to Bhishma, the revered patriarch of the Bharata dynasty. Tell me, O Bhishma, he asked, how should a king without the aid of his usual allies behave towards a powerful foe who has invaded his kingdom? Bhishma, with his wise and venerable countenance, began to recount an ancient tale from the annals of time. In days of old, he said, the eternal Asin, that mighty lord of rivers, sought counsel from its tributaries on a matter that weighed heavily upon his mind. The Asin's query was this: why did the rivers, with their powerful currents, sweep away great trees, tearing them from their roots and branches, yet never bring him a humble cane that grew on their banks? The river gang, responding to the Asin's inquiry, spoke in measured tones. Trees are rooted in one place, she explained, and resist our currents, forcing us to uproot them. But canes behave differently. When faced with our advancing waters, they bend and yield only to resume their original posture once the current has passed. Ganga continued, the cane knows when to adapt, when to be flexible, and when to stand firm. It is docile, obedient, and yielding, yet unbroken. Bhishma's eyes sparkled as he resumed his tale, drawing a profound lesson from the Asin's dialogue with the rivers. A person who refuses to yield to the power of an enemy, one who is stronger and more formidable, will soon meet with destruction. He cautioned, but for one who assesses the strength and weaknesses of both himself and his foe and adapts accordingly, there need be no fear of defeat in this moment. Bhishma's words were like a gentle breeze on a summer day, soothing and instructive. These Yudhishthira listened intently to Bhishma's words. He felt the weight of wisdom settle upon him. He realized that true strength lies not in resistance, but in flexibility and knowing when to bend and yield to the forces that shape our lives. Like the humble cane, which adapts to the currents, yet remains unbroken, a wise leader must learn to navigate the complexities of power and politics with a gentle hand. In this moment of revelation, Yudhishthira understood that true leadership is not about dominance or aggression, but about knowing when to yield and when to stand firm, and as he gazed upon Bhishma's wise countenance, he knew that he had been given a precious gift, the wisdom to navigate the turbulent waters of life with compassion, courage, and discernment. As the assembly hall fell silent, Yudhishthira turned to his brothers, his eyes shining with newfound understanding we must learn from. In the midst of a grand assembly, Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, posed a question to Bhishma, the venerable warrior and sage. "How, O Bharata," he asked, "should a learned man adorned with modesty behave when assailed with harsh speeches by an ignorant person?" Swelling with conceit, Bhishma, the esteemed advisor, gazed at Yudhishthira with wise eyes and began to recount the timeless wisdom of the scriptures. A person of good soul, he said, should endure in this world the abusive speeches of persons of little intelligence. Bhishma's words dripped with tranquility as he continued, "If a person, when abused by another, does not yield to wrath, he is then sure to take away the merit of all the good deeds that have been done by the abuser." As Bhishma spoke, his voice echoed through the assembly like a gentle breeze rustling leaves. "The endurer," he said, "in such a case communicates the demerit of all their own bad acts to the person who, under the influence of wrath, indulges in abuse." Yudhishthira listened intently, his eyes reflecting his deep understanding of the wisdom being shared. Bhishma's words painted vivid pictures of those who yield to hate, and danger one who yields to hate, he said, is said to live in vain. He described how a fool might boast of having abused someone in an assembly, much like a shameless man would proudly proclaim an act that should be kept hidden. Bhishma's tone turned stern as he cautioned such a wretch among men should carefully be disregarded. As the wise sage spoke on, his words conjured images of a crow cawing uselessly in the woods. "What can a vulgar fellow do by either his praise or his blame?" Bhishma asked. "He is even like a crow that caws uselessly in the woods." He warned that those who accuse others with their words are as effective as fools invoking death upon themselves. Yudhishthira listened attentively, his face reflecting his deep understanding of the wisdom being shared. Bhishma's words painted vivid pictures of those who engage in hurtful speech. "That man simply proclaims his bastardy," he said, "who indulges in such conduct and words." He compared them to a peacock dancing while showing its shameful parts. Bhishma's voice turned solemn as he cautioned against associating with individuals who speak ill of others behind their backs or when they are not present. A person of pure conduct, he said, should never even speak with the right of sinful conduct. He described how such a person loses all their regions in heaven and the fruits of any knowledge and virtue they may have. Yudhishthira's eyes sparkled with understanding. The sun had just begun to set over the kingdom, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets. Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, sat at the feet of his venerable grandfather Bhishma, seeking guidance and wisdom. "Sire," Yudhishthira began, "I have one great doubt that perplexes me. You are a sage king, wise beyond your years, and I seek your counsel on matters of state." His voice was filled with reverence and respect for the old man who had always been a source of guidance and strength. Bhishma smiled, his eyes twinkling with understanding. "Speak, my child," he said. "What is it that troubles you?" Yudhishthira took a deep breath before launching into his question. How should a king govern his kingdom? What kind of servants does he need to surround himself with in order to succeed? "I have seen many kings who have failed because they were swayed by their emotions and surrounded themselves with wicked men." Bhishma nodded, thoughtfully steepling his fingers together as he considered the question. "A king cannot rule alone," he said. "Finally, he needs servants who are knowledgeable, wise, and devoted to his well-being. They must be of high birth and tranquil disposition, capable of giving advice and guidance." Yudhishthira leaned forward, eager for more information. "And what about ministers?" he asked. "What qualities should they possess?" Bhishma's eyes sparkled with approval. "A good minister is one who is well-born, incapable of being swayed by bribes or other influences. He must be wise and knowledgeable, able to provide counsel and guidance to the king, and most importantly, he must have a deep understanding of the virtues of time and the ability to anticipate future events." As Bhishma spoke, Yudhishthira's face lit up with understanding. "And what about the king's subjects?" he asked. "How can he ensure their happiness and loyalty?" Bhishma smiled again. "A happy kingdom is one where the people are cheerful and high-minded. They must be encouraged to follow the path of righteousness, and the king must ensure that justice is administered fairly and properly." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Bhishma's words came to an end, but their impact would stay with Yudhishthira. Forever he felt the sense of clarity and purpose wash over him, knowing that he had been given valuable guidance on how to rule his kingdom wisely. "Thank you, grandsire Yudhishthira," said his voice, filled with gratitude. "Your words have removed my doubts and given me the confidence to lead our people." Bhishma's eyes shone with warmth as he placed a hand on Yudhishthira's shoulder. "You are a true."
In the heart of a vast uninhabited forest there lived a wise and powerful ascetic, known for his unwavering dedication to his spiritual path. He spent his days meditating on sacred texts, observing strict vows, and controlling his senses with utmost discipline. His tranquil and pure soul radiated an aura of kindness, drawing creatures from far and wide to seek his counsel. Among these devoted followers was a domestic animal that had chosen to live permanently in the hermitage, never leaving the sage's side. This loyal dog, weak but steadfast due to its self-imposed fasts, subsisted on fruit and roots, reflecting the sage's own simple yet profound way of life. As they sat together, the dog would listen intently as the sage recited sacred hymns, his heart filled with devotion. And day a fearsome leopard appeared at the hermitage, its eyes gleaming with hunger for blood. The air was charged with tension as this formidable predator stalked its prey, the loyal dog trembling in fear and desperation. The dog turned to the sage and pleaded for protection. "O Holy One, this leopard is a foe of our kind. It wishes to slay me. Please, great sage, act so that my fears from this beast may be dispelled through your benevolence." Moved by the dog's distress, the sage understood its true nature. It had ample cause for fear. With his omniscient gaze he beheld the leopard's malevolent intentions and chose to intervene on behalf of his loyal companion. "Thou shalt have no fear of death from leopards any longer," he declared. "Let thy natural form disappear, and be thou a leopard, O son." And so with a mere command the dog was transformed into a majestic leopard, its golden coat glistening in the sunlight as it now roamed the forest as one of its own kind. The leopard's former fears vanished, replaced by an unshakable confidence. However, this newfound freedom did not last long, for soon another predator emerged, a ferocious tiger with jaws open wide, eager to claim its next meal. The transformed leopard, once again seeking protection from the sage, was reassured that it would be safe. A sage, moved by his loyal companion's plight, chose to grant it yet another transformation. "Let thy form change once more," he commanded. "Be thou a tiger, powerful for all foes." And with this new transformation, the leopard was reborn as a mighty tiger, its strength and ferocity now matched by its capacity for compassion. As time passed, the transformed tiger adapted to its new role, subsisting on flesh and blood rather than fruit and roots. Its instincts now guided it to hunt and feed like the other predators of the forest, yet it remained true to its original nature, kind and benevolent toward all creatures. In this way, the sage's intervention had created a being. In the verdant hermitage, Bhishma will often tell tales of the transformations that befell a certain animal. It was a story of metamorphosis, of change and adaptation as the creature navigated the complexities of life. A tale began with a humble dog, content in its own skin, sleeping peacefully amidst the yurt of the hermitage. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming lotuses and the sound of gentle streams flowing through the forest. But peace was short-lived, for an enraged elephant emerged from the trees, its massive body shaking the ground beneath. The dog, sensing danger, sought refuge at the feet of the wise Rishi, who dwelled in the hermitage. The sage, perceiving the dog's fear, transformed it into an elephant, granting it a new form to match its surroundings. And so the former dog roamed the forest as a majestic creature, its tusks gleaming in the sunlight. As time passed, the Rishi's elephant grew complacent, striding through the forest with ease. But one day a mighty lion emerged from the mountains, its mane a fiery halo against the sky. The Rishi's elephant trembled at the sight of this new predator and sought protection once more. This time, the sage transformed it into a lion, matching its form to that of the beast that now threatened it. But even as a lion, the creature felt no sense of belonging. It dwelled in the hermitage, but the other animals avoided it, inspired by fear rather than respect. And then one day a Saratan, a fearsome creature with 8 legs and eyes on its forehead, appeared at the hermitage, seeking to slay the Rishas. The sage, perceiving the danger, transformed his lion into a Sarava, granting it strength and ferocity. To match the new threat, the wild Sarava, beholding its own reflection in the form of the Rishas creature, fled in terror from the forest. Thus the transformations continued, each one a response to the changing circumstances of life. And yet as the story unfolded, it became clear that the true nature of the creature remained unchanged. It was still driven by its primal instincts and desires. The final transformation came when the Sarava, now grown fierce and bloodthirsty, sought to slay the wise Rishi who had granted it life in so many forms. But the sage saw through its intentions, addressing the beast with a mixture of sorrow and disdain. "O dog," the Rishi said, "you were first transformed into a leopard, then a tiger, an elephant, a lion, and finally a Sarava. I have given you these diverse shapes, but in truth you belong to none of them. By birth your nature remains unchanged, that of a creature driven by its passions and desires." With those words,
in the scorching heat of the sun-baked forest, a dog named Saramut had been transformed into a majestic creature by the sage Vasishta's blessings. However, as soon as he regained his true form, Sarama became despondent and listless. The wise sage, realizing that the dog was no longer worthy of his hermitage, gently rebuked him and drove him away. Vishma, the venerable patriarch, reflected on this incident and cautioned that an intelligent king must learn from it. He emphasized the importance of appointing servants to offices based on their qualifications and abilities. A king should first assess a person's traits, such as truthfulness, purity, sincerity, and knowledge of Scripture before entrusting them with responsibility. A minister, Bhishma declared, should be possessed of high birth and strength. He should be forgiving and self-restrained, with all his senses under control. He must be free from the vice of rapacity, contented with just acquisitions, delighted in the prosperity of his master and friends, and conversant with the requirements of place and time. The wise patriarch continued to expound on the qualities that a king should look for in a minister. The ideal candidate would be one who is skilled in warfare, knowledgeable about the Scriptures, and capable of reading signs and gestures. He must also possess agreeable features, be sweet-spoken, and surrounded by righteous friends. King Bhishma said, "Who succeeds in obtaining such a minister can never be humiliated or overpowered by anyone. Indeed, his kingdom will gradually spread over the earth like the light of the moon." The wise patriarchs then turned to the subject of appointing servants to offices that suit their abilities. He cautioned against placing a dog above its station, for it would become intoxicated with pride. A Sarava should occupy the position of a Sarava. A lion should swell with the might of a lion. A tiger should be placed in the position of a tiger, and a leopard should be placed as a leopard. Bhishma emphasized that servants should be appointed to offices based on their qualifications, and that a king who confers such appointments will enjoy the happiness attached to sovereignty. He warned against appointing unfit persons to offices, for it would lead to failure in gratifying one's people. A wise patriarch concluded by urging kings to seek out accomplished servants, honest, brave, learned, and possessed of high birth. They should be men who are pure in behavior, clever in business, and adorned with diverse gifts of nature. A king, Bhishma said, who desires to possess such accomplished servants should never appoint persons that are destitute of intelligence, low-minded, without wisdom, not masters of their senses, or of low birth. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the landscape, Bhishma's words hung in the air like in the grand hall of the palace. Yudhishthira, the wise king, sought the counsel of Bhishma, the venerable patriarch. "Tell me, O Bhishma," Yudhishthira requested, "how a king must conduct himself to fulfill his duties and protect his people." Bhishma's eyes sparkled with wisdom as he began to speak. A king's primary duty is to safeguard all living beings. Bhishma declared he must be like the peacock, displaying various hues and forms to adapt to different situations. Keenness, cunning, truthfulness, and sincerity are essential qualities for a king. Vishnu's words dripped with conviction as he continued, "A king should assume diverse personas, just as a peacock changes its plumage to suit the season." Vishnu elaborated on the importance of being discreet, like the peacock in autumn, which conceals its counsel. A king must speak little and only share sweet words, For his words have the power to either heal or harm. His features should be noble, and he should be well versed in the Scriptures. He must ever vigilantly guard against potential dangers, just as one protects the embankments of a tank from overflowing waters. A king who desires wealth should emulate the behavior of those who maintain a curl lock, a symbol of piety and modesty. The rod of chastisement should always be at his side, ready to be used when necessary. When collecting taxes, he must examine the incomes and expenses of his subjects with care, just as one would harvest the juice from a mature palmyra. Sri Vishma's words painted the vivid picture of a wise king, one who acts equitably towards his subjects, crushes the enemies cropped under his cavalry's hooves, and observes the weaknesses of his own kingdom. He should proclaim the faults of his foes, eliminate their partisans, and collect wealth from outside. Just as one gathers flowers from the woods, as Bhishma spoke, he likened a king to the peacock in rain, which enters its quarters alone and unseen, but then enjoys the companionship of its wives within its hair apartments. A king should not be complacent, for his enemies, spies, may spread nets for him. He must win over these spies, but ultimately extirpate them. When opportunity arises, a wise and peacock-like king should rule with a policy beneficial to himself, gathering wisdom from everywhere, just as the peacock collects insects from the forest by exercising his own intelligence. He should settle what actions to take, and then consult with others to either confirm or abandon those resolutions. Aided by the Scriptures' sharpened intelligence, one can navigate life's complexities. In this way, a king conversant with the duties of kingcraft would reward his officers and subjects publicly for their good deeds, chastise those who deserve it.
The sun had just begun to set on the kingdom of Hastinapur, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets. Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandava brothers, sat at the feet of his grandfather Bhishma, eager to learn from the wise old sage grandsire. Yudhishthira began, "You have spoken of the duties of kings and the importance of chastisement. I must confess that I am curious about this mysterious figure. Who is he? What form does he take, and what is his role in our world?" Bhishma's eyes sparkled with a hint of amusement as he replied, "At Yudhishthira, you seek to know the secrets of chastisement. Very well, I shall enlighten you." Bhishma took a deep breath and began to speak in a measured tone, his words weaving a tapestry of wonder and awe. "Chastisement is that by which righteousness is kept up," he explained. "It is the Lord of all things, for everything depends upon it. Without chastisement, our world would be chaos, and creatures would prey on one another without restraint." As Bhishma spoke, his words conjured images in Yudhishthira's mind: a blazing fire that consumed all impurities, a dark-skinned deity with 4 arms, 8 legs, and many eyes, standing tall like a mighty tree. Chastisement is a great god. Bhishma continued, with the power to assume any form he desires. He can be a sword, a saber, or even the fierce roar of the lioness. Yudhishthira listened, his mind reeled with the sheer diversity of chastisement's forms. "He is the parent of prosperity," Bhishma said, "the punisher, checker, and avenger. He is the Scriptures' Brahmana, mantra, and the holy Vishnu himself. His wife, morality, is known by many names. Brahmana's daughter, Lakshmivritai Saraswati, and mother of the university." Air was thick with anticipation as Bhishma revealed the full scope of chastisement's powers, blessings and curse, pleasure and pain, righteousness and unrighteousness. All these are forms of chastisement, he declared. He is the soul of Rudra, the eldest Manu, and the great benefactor. Without him our world would be a chaotic mess. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the kingdom in a soft twilight glow, Vishwa's words came to an end. Yudhishthira sat in stunned silence, his mind reeling with the sheer magnitude of chastisement's power and majesty. And yet, as he looked up in the sacred mountains of Himavat, where the golden peaks touched the sky, there lived a king named Vasoma. He was renowned for his piety and austere penances, which he practiced alongside his queen. Their devotion and earned them great esteem among the Brahmanas, who considered them to be celestial rishis in holiness. And day, as Vasoma sat under the shade of a majestic banyan tree, surrounded by the tranquility of nature, he received an unexpected guest. King Mandhatriya, just ruler and friend of Indra. Upon arrival, Mandhatriya was struck by Vasoma's unwavering dedication to his spiritual practices. With humility, he stood before the king, who welcomed him with open arms. As they sat together in contemplative silence, Mandhatriya asked Vasoma about the mysteries of chastisement. its origin, essence, and purpose. Vasoma, pleased by the king's curiosity, began to recount an ancient tale passed down through generations. He spoke of a time when the universe was plagued by chaos and disorder, with no distinction between right and wrong. In this era of confusion, the divine Brahman, the grandsire of all worlds, sought to perform a grand sacrifice, but couldn't find a worthy priest. The great god conceived a foetus within his brain, which took form after 1,000 years had passed. This being, known as Kshipa, was born with immense power and became the high priest for the grandsire's sacrifice. However, during the ceremony, chastisement, that upholder of righteousness, vanished in the presence of Brahman's visible form. The universe descended into chaos, with no boundaries between clean and unclean, or between what was permissible and forbidden. Creatures began to harm one another, and social norms were lost. Moved by compassion, the grandsire worshipped Vishnu, who took on the form of chastisement to restore balance to the world. Armed with an enormous sula, Vishnu created righteousness, which became the legs upon which chastisement stood. The goddess Saraswati then forged Dandanatai, the sins of chastisement, which spread across the globe. Vasoma continued his tale. He revealed that Vishnu appointed various deities to rule over different aspects of the universe: Indra as the ruler of the gods, Yama as the lord of the Pitras, and Kuvra as the guardian of treasures. Death was made the lord of life, while fire became the protector of all living things. The story unfolded further, telling of how chastisement was passed down through successive holders, from Brahman's son Kshipa to man, the son of Surya, and eventually to his sons, for the protection of the world. Throughout its journey, chastisement remained vigilant, protecting all creatures. In the midst of a tranquil forest, Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, sat in deep contemplation with Bhishma, the venerable sage. The king's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he posed his question to Bhishma. Tell me, revered one, what is the ultimate truth about virtue, wealth, and pleasure? How do they relate to each other, and which one should we prioritize in our lives? Bhishma's eyes twinkled with wisdom as he began to expound upon the intricacies of human existence. When men strive for wealth with a pure heart, guided by virtue, then these three, virtue, wealth, and pleasure, can coexist harmoniously. Wealth is rooted in virtue, and pleasure is the fruit that ribbons from it. All three ultimately stem from will, which is driven by desire. As Bhishma spoke, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the nearby trees, carrying the whispers of ancient wisdom. Wealth and pleasure are but fleeting shadows, he continued, while virtue remains the steadfast foundation upon which we build our limbs when pursued for spiritual growth and self-knowledge. These three become proximate, guiding us toward emancipation. Yudhishthira listened intently, his mind absorbing the weight of Bhishma's words. He knew that the path to true fulfillment was fraught with challenges, and he sought guidance on how to navigate its complexities. Revered one, he asked, how can we distinguish between virtue and wealth when they appear to be intertwined? And what is the nature of pleasure, which seems to be both a reward and a source of suffering? Bhishma's expression turned grave as he pondered the king's questions. Virtue, wealth, and pleasure are often inextricably linked, yet they can also exist separately. He said, when we prioritize virtue, it lays the foundation for true wealth, which is not mere material accumulation, but a state of inner richness. And as for pleasure, it is but a fleeting satisfaction that arises from satisfying our desires. As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the forest, Bhishma's thoughts turned to an ancient tale that had been passed down through generations. In days of old, he said, a king named Angarista sought wisdom from the great Rishi Kamandika. The king asked for guidance on how to atone for his past transgressions and prevent future ones. Kamandika's words echoed through time as Bhishma recounted them. A man who abandons virtue and wealth in pursuit of mere pleasure will ultimately destroy his intelligence, leading to heedlessness and chaos. The king must restrain the wicked among his subjects, respecting the Brahmanas and upholding righteousness as the. In the midst of the grandeur and prosperity of his brother's kingdom at Indraprastha, Yudhishthira couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. He had always been known for his virtuous behavior, but now he found himself questioning its true value. What is this virtue everyone speaks so highly of? He asked his uncle Bhishma. How can one acquire it, and what are its characteristics? Bhishma listened attentively to Yudhishthira's question and then began to recount an old story from the past. It was a tale of Duryodhana, who had once approached their father Dhritarashtra with similar doubts about virtue. Why do you grieve, my son? Dhritarashtra asked, sensing his son's distress.
Tell me, what troubles you? And I will try to help. Duryodhana explained that he was consumed by jealousy as he watched Yudhishthira's prosperity grow. He had seen the lavish mansion, the golden plates, the fine robes, and the majestic steeds, but it was not just material wealth that troubled him. It was the way Yudhishthira seemed to effortlessly attract the admiration of all who saw him. I want to be like him. Duryodhana confessed. Dhritarashtra smiled knowingly and said, if you wish to win prosperity, like